Okay, ladies and gentlemen, excuse me, brothers and sisters, welcome to another My Left Eye PMQ's live stream. Hope you're well this evening. Well, what a day it's been. Before we go on to live reaction and commentary and analysis, etc., of PMQs itself, I'm going to be talking about the obvious breaking news story of the day, where to go to the polls on the 4th of July, Independence Day, in the USA. And Sunak's called the election, so I'm going to be throwing my 2 cents in at that before we dive into PMQs. Please do hit thumbs up, notification bell, etc. Give us a bit of a boost on the old YouTube algorithm. Chat's now open as well. Feel free to join the chat. You will have to be subscribed to do that, but if you're not subscribed already, just hit the button and 60 seconds later you'll be able to join us in the chat. Let us know how you're doing this evening. Let us know what you think about the election being called, as well as today's session in the House of Commons. I've not seen any of it myself. It's a genuine reaction as always. And yeah, I'll just be... This was obviously before the announcement that there's going to be an election, so we will again, of course, be keeping count of how many times Sunak says stop the boats, as well as how many times someone mentions that Keir Starmer's a lawyer. Feel free to post your predictions in the chat as well. And if you'd also like to help to support the channel in another way, you can hit the join button. You should find it just underneath the stream on YouTube. And the package is just 99p. You get some exclusive perks. Please do check those out. And that includes static emojis, which you can use in live streams such as this one. And speaking of memberships, we've had some new members recently, so I just want to say thanks to those for joining, as well as those of you who've bought gift memberships for other viewers recently. This is the latest scroll, which I'm going to play before we, as always, dip into Keith's Lounge for some pre-PMQs fondue. Sorry about the wait, folks. Just making some adjustments on the microphone there. Yeah, we're going to be seeing Sunak's announcement. Keith's reaction to it was, of course, a torrential downpour during the announcement, and you wouldn't think that he had a £2 million press room in his own home that's got a roof either. Just going to wait a few more moments before we go on to a couple of clips and then straight into PMQs. Apologies for that slight technical fault there. I think it's all resolved now. Right, let's take a look then. This picture comes from Cold War Steve. It pretty much sums up how the announcement went, as well as the state of the country's waterways, etc. Very fitting. Yeah, good work there from Cold War Steve. Give him a follow on Twitter if you don't already. 4th of July, we go to the polls. Well, a lot of the press, Sunak and Starmer, are assuming it's just going to be a revolving door of neoliberal right-wing shills, but they are probably right in that regard. I'm hoping that things turn out slightly different than people are expecting, shall we say. It's a good chance to show that people are tired of you know, the old guard, the old parties. Are we just going to keep moving between neoliberal parties, you know, just in different coloured ties? And this is what Sunak had to say. Unsurprisingly, he started off by attempting to remind the public of all of what he thinks the good work that he's done throughout his time as Prime Minister and before. He's very quick to remind everybody that he's the one that brought in the furlough scheme, for example, and other things that he believes add weight to him gaining some votes in this election, but deciding to do it out there in the rain. There was also another interesting factor to the announcement, which we'll come on to as well, something you might have heard in the background, perhaps a familiar figure trying to interrupt the announcement, which is famous for. Be talking a little bit about that as well. But let's just quickly remind ourselves about the announcement itself.
In the last 5 years, our country has fought through the most challenging times since the Second World War. As I stand here as your Prime Minister, I can't help but reflect that my first proper introduction to you was just over 4 years ago. I stood behind one of the podiums, upstairs in the building behind me. I told you that we faced...
That's the building behind him that's got a £2 million press room and a roof. A roof.
A generation-defining moment, and that we as a society would not be judged by some government action, but by the small acts of kindness that we showed one another. You met that challenge, and then some, and I have never been prouder to be British. And when I introduced the furlough scheme, I did so not because I saw a country simply in need of desperate help, albeit we were, but because I saw a country whose future hung in the balance. I could be bold and trust in the tens of millions of you at home that you would rise to the moment, or I could accept the inevitable millions of job losses and pick up the pieces. In truth, it was no choice at all. I have never and will never leave the people of this country to face the darkest of days alone, and you know that because you've seen it.
He's really trying to sweeten everybody up, isn't he? He's like, just obviously he knows he's about to officially announce the election, but he's already getting, you know, please go easy on me. Remember when I did this wasn't this good. Pretty desperate and cowardly, really. He's not saying anything about not having a mandate from the voters, from the people. The fact that he's become Prime Minister in the manner that he has, without having to sit in a general election so far, he didn't even bring up. He thinks he's doing the hustings already, and he's not even made the announcement at this point.
As I did then, I will forever do everything in my power to provide you with the strongest possible protection I can. That is my promise to you. Because for so many of us, it's easy to forget the scale of what we've been through. We were hit by a pandemic that upended normal life.
Yep, we weren't the only country that had the pandemic, Rishi. Goodness sake. The amount of times he tried to use that excuse for the failings is beyond me. Venusian Teapot, hey up. Hope you're doing well this evening. And H. Lukill, thanks for joining us in the chat. Let us know how you are this evening. And thanks a lot for displaying your members' badges. It's great to see both members and non-members here this evening. You're all welcome. Right, let's crack through a bit more of this speech before we get to Keith's reaction. You can see the rain's already starting to come down on Sunak, both literally and figuratively. Yeah, this is probably the first time in his life that he's had to stand out in the rain without somebody holding an umbrella over him. He seems quite perturbed.
Who would have thought that the government would ever tell us how many times a day we could leave our homes? Then, just as we were recovering from COVID, war returned to Europe, with Putin's invasion of Ukraine sending your energy bills spiralling.
Oh, that he can say such a thing with a straight face. No, it's just the greed of energy companies. We got 4% of natural gas from Russia, just 4%. It's only fossil fuel greed that has bumped people's energy bills up, as well as privatisation of energy companies, of course. Any profits would be going back into the system if they were properly nationalised, as they should be. And he's looking deep into the camera there with a straight face when he says that. So he's already getting the excuses in, blaming the pandemic, trying to blame Putin. We've heard these all before. This is just like his greatest hits coming out 6 weeks before he stands a serious chance of losing his position and his party being removed from government.
I came to office above all to restore economic stability. Economic stability is the bedrock of any future success, whether that is rising wages and good jobs, investment in our public services, or the...
That's, again, none of the above. We've seen so many cuts over the last 15 years, as we all know. Economic stability, what's he talking about? Prices are still rising. They'll try and make you want to go out and have a street party because things still are costing more, just at a slower rate. And to them, that's some sort of tremendous achievement for which they should have statues built of them and songs written and be remembered throughout the ages and eons. Their successes are ridiculously overstated, of course, and always will be. That's the Tory way.
defence of the country. And because of our collective sacrifice and your hard work, we have reached two major milestones in delivering that stability, showing that when we work together, anything is possible.
Okay, gotta, obviously, I think between now and the election, you're not going to hear many statements from Sunak that don't include either the word deliver or stop the boats, for example. And mentioned another interesting factor during the announcement. You might have just heard that coming in the opening lines of things can only get better. the D-Ream song, which, of course, so-called New Labour used in the 97 campaign when they were successful in getting a landslide. No prizes for guessing if you didn't know so already. That was the famous protester Steve Bray, right outside the gates of Downing Street itself. It didn't surprise me. I watched this announcement live, but it didn't surprise me later to find out that it was him. I probably suspected it myself, to be honest, at the time. So if you're wondering what that was all about, then that just sort of explains that. I've met Steve Bray quite a few times. Nice guy. He's certainly a persistent protester. His main thing is obviously campaigning to get the country to rejoin the EU, but he generally despises Tories in any forms as well, so good on him. I've got some footage of him here, by the way. I've had to just put it on mute. Not sure if having the song on will be outside of, T's and C's and copyright things, etc. So if you just bear with me, I'm gonna show you that. So that's Steve there, and you'll hear. Actually, I'll just pause that 1 second and.
Economy is now growing faster than anyone predicted, outpacing Germany, France and the United States. And this morning it was confirmed that inflation is back to normal. This means that the pressure on prices will ease and mortgage rates will come down. This is proof that the plan and priorities I set out are working. I recognise that it has not always been easy. Some of you will only just...
A minute ago, he was acting as though the Tories have been the best thing to happen to this country since sliced bread. He very quickly launched into trying to appeal to people's sense of nostalgia, even though you'd have to be, around 90 years old to remember World War II. But of course, he launched straight into that and then proceeded to make a series of excuses. But now he's also trying to say that things have been hard. He's trying to have it both ways. He's trying to have his cake and eat it. If things have been difficult, then that means he's not been great for the country. So he can't stand there for 3 minutes trying to reel off a list of his so-called achievements, veiled in pathetic lies and excuses.
Be starting to feel the benefits, and for some, it might still be hard when you look at your bank balance. But this hard-earned economic stability was only ever meant to be the beginning. The question now is how, and who do you trust to turn that foundation into a secure future for you, your family, and our country? Now,
that thing about your bank balances, I think "your" is the pertinent word there. It was recently revealed that he's made a massive amount of money since he became Prime Minister, and I wonder how that's happened. Why does someone who takes a 5-figure salary, perhaps barely scraping 6 figures salary in his position as Prime Minister, want that position if they're worth 2/3, 3/4 of £1 billion and part of a family worth billions? The man on your screen is richer than the late Queen, for example. So your bank balances was the thing. You must have seen the memes going back quite a few years now of the antagonist from Shrek, Lord Farquaad, stood there on his castle, voiced by what's it called, John. Oh, help me out here, folks. I've forgotten his last name. It'll come to me. But he says, "Many of you will die, but that's something that I prepared to let happen." It's basically the same thing. You'll get poor, I'll get rich, because I'm a Tory and number 10.
Is the moment for Britain to choose its future, to decide whether we want to build on the progress we have made or risk going back to square one with no plan and no certainty. Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
So, it is to be the 4th of July, American Independence Day. But of course, everybody does have a choice. It's not just binary, clear-cut between the Tories and Labour. Remember that, everybody, when you go to the ballot. As well, please do support your socialist grassroots parties, independent candidate, trade union, socialist coalition candidate, or the Green Party, who have a very socialist manifesto this time around as well. But don't see it as just being a case of getting the Tories out. You know, we do want to stand up to the right wing in its entirety, whether it's through Tories, Labour, or Liberals, Democrats. Lord knows. I mean, I'm going to go on to what Keith's reaction was to this, but those of you who were regular viewers of the channel will know that I don't have an ounce of love for Starmer. So a choice between these two is no real choice at all, as far as I'm concerned. Oh, how did that get in there?
Thank you. Tonight, the Prime Minister
Thank you, both of you.
has finally announced the next general election, a moment the country needs and has been waiting for, and where, by the force of our democracy, power returns to you. A chance to change for the better.
Two flags there, of course, two Union flags. If you'd like my full 2 cents on the recent relaunch, as it were, the 6 first steps that Keith announced recently, please do check out my latest live stream on that as well, with the accompanying ridiculous video that if you just put, I don't know, if you put Theresa May in there instead of Keir Starmer, you wouldn't be able to differentiate between a Tory promotion video and a Labour promotion video. So do check that out if you want my full 2 cents on this. But he took just 15 minutes, I think, after the announcement to make his own. And he was very quick to get in there with the flags. And it's me, it's all about Keith, according to the Labour strategy. He's not exactly bags of personality, Mr. Smooth, but that's the way that they're trying to play it, and that's the way that that promotional video I mentioned also tries to go as well. And you'll notice there's just one word on the top of the lectern, which you'll see here, which was change.
Your future, your community, your country. Now, it will feel like a long campaign, I'm sure of that. But no matter what else is said and done, that opportunity for change is what this election is about.
Yeah, Sharon Whitlock, thanks a lot for joining us in the chat this evening. Hope you're well. You're quite right, it is hard to get excited when you know that the only change coming is the name of the party and the colour of the rosettes. It is quite depressing. I've mentioned this before. I remember that sinking feeling back in 2019, and then later when Keith got in as leader of the opposition, that it's going to be a long, long time before we have any serious socialist opposition vis-a-vis in one of the mainstream parties. But people do have a choice. People do have a choice. Please do. It's your vote. You can do entirely what you'd like to do with it. I'm just saying what I'd like to see happen. I'd like to see people go out there and vote for those aforementioned grassroots parties, independents, etc.
Over the course of the last 4 years, we've changed the Labour Party, returned it once.
Yeah, you've kicked it to the, you've not just sort of nudged it to the right, you've really kicked it down the road, down the road on the right.
It's more to the service of working people.
This change thing, obviously, I've chosen quite a moment to pause that there. Screenshot time, anyone? But my point was that they're still trying to ride off the back of this manufactured attack on the former leader of the opposition, Jeremy Corbyn, of course, and the false accusations of anti-Semitism, etc., against him. Sorry, I'm trying to be serious while I'm having to look at Keith's face stuck in the position it is. And for that reason alone, I think it's time to move the video on a little more.
All we ask now, humbly, is to do exactly the same for our country and return Britain to the service of working people. To that purpose, we offer why you should change Britain with Labour. One, because we will stop the chaos. Look around our country. The sewage in our rivers, people waiting on trolleys in A&E, crime virtually unpunished, mortgages and food prices through the roof. It's all, every bit of it, a direct result of the Tory chaos in Westminster. Time and again, they pursue their own interests rather than tackling the issues that affect your family.
This is someone who has knowingly taken about 50 grand from Israel lobbyists.
And if they get another 5 years, they will feel entitled to carry on exactly as they are. Nothing will change. A vote for Labour is a vote for stability, economic and political. A politics that treads more lightly on all our lives.
Then why are you just mirroring them and imitating them exactly in the same fashion? Not just with the policies, with the syntax, the language that you use, the way that you do politics is Tory to the core, Keith. All this man's interested in is gaining power. I mentioned on Sunday's live stream as well that when Kussenberg and Shaps appeared on Kussenberg's Sunday Politics show and listed the main policies, they were almost exactly the same. Some of them the same policy, just worded differently. I think instead of stop the boats, Labour are going with smash the boat crossings or something like that. It's that similar. It's so forgettable. Also with it, but that's not change. That's not real change at all. You can't quite see that in this shot, but you'll notice if you saw this and if you've seen pictures of it, etc., that he had the word change, as I said, on the top of the lectern. Someone I saw on social media earlier pointed out that he looks like he's got a part-time job in an amusement arcade, which was pretty funny. But it is far from funny, the choice that we're presented with in terms of the so-called main two parties this upcoming election.
A vote to stop the chaos. 2, because it's time for change. Our offer is to reset both our economy and our politics so that they once again serve the interests of working people. We totally reject the Tory view that economic strength is somehow gifted from those at the top.
He said working people, goodness, I think this is the 4th or 5th time already during this response. But this is a man who won't even call for a £15 an hour minimum wage. This is a man who complains when even members of the NHS go on strike calling to be paid £15 an hour. Working people, don't give us that, The worst part about it is how insulting it is to people's intelligence. also very tragic to see what's happened to the Labour Party, one founded on the unions by a unionist, and where working people are going to want to stand up for their rights after the next general election, win or lose, Keith is not going to support them whatsoever. Although Sharon Graham from Unite, the biggest union, has recently shockingly showed support. She's announced support for Starmer despite many previous criticisms. I know that a lot of people are disappointed by that. I'm not exactly sure what the goings on of that are, what offers may or may not have been put on the table, shall we say, to change her mind. If you know of any details, if you know of anyone in the union itself who could perhaps shed some light on that, let us know in the chat. Also, JC Vasco, very welcome to you in the chat tonight as well. Yeah, you and the EU don't want the UK back. Well, that doesn't surprise me, the way that not only this country, the politicians specifically, acted as we came to exit the EU, as well as in the run-up to all that. It was obviously massively xenophobic. We are and always will still be geographically part of the continent of Europe, of course, but we're getting a bit distracted, sidetracked here. Let's just hear what Keith's got to say. Got to get on to PMQs very shortly. Thanks a lot for joining us on the chat tonight. Don't forget to hit buttons, etc. And you're all very welcome.
Over the past 14 years, through all the crises we've had to face, sticking with that idea has left our country exposed, insecure, and unable to unlock the potential of every community. But a vote for Labour is a vote to turn the page on all that. A vote for change. And finally,
this unlocking he mentions, it's the same as hitting the big Go Economy button as well. Another interesting freeze frame there for you, but he's just going to open this magic door of which he speaks and everything's going to be okay. It's just something that the Tories have been sitting on. Don't ask him how he's going to do it or what the policies might be, because all he's got for you is more generic rhetoric. Neoliberalism.
only three, because we have a long-term plan to rebuild Britain. A plan that is ready to go, fully costed and fully funded. We can deliver economic stability, cut the NHS waiting times, secure our borders with a new border security command.
Again, just imagine if this was Theresa May. It's very easy to do, being flanked by two union flags. And I often struggle to believe just how little difference there is.
Harness great British energy to cut your bills for good. Tackle antisocial behaviour and get the teachers we need in your children's classroom.
You know those kids that hang around the precincts or at the end of your road or whatever? We're just going to snap our fingers and get rid of those. Yeah. And also other magic things will happen with further finger clicking and just economic stability, boats. Oh, God.
But most importantly of all, we do all this with a new spirit of service. Country first, party second. A rejection of the gesture politics you will see in this campaign, I have no doubt, from the top.
No, I think it goes Keith's career first, party second, country question mark. That's the way it's actually written in the strategy meetings, on overhead projectors, or on a whiteboard or a blackboard or whatever. Scribbled down on the back of a frigging cigarette packet, or however they come up with this crap. But whoever does is certainly overpaid. and just full of hubris.
Tories and the SNP. I'm well aware of the cynicism people hold towards politicians at the moment.
That's because of you. That's your fault. That's your fault. You've undermined democracy in so many ways. Whatever you think about Britain leaving the EU, of course, many people, when they went to the ballot in 2019, thought that Labour was trying to undermine a democracy. With this man's policy, it was his own policy that he announced live on TV without consulting Jeremy Corbyn, and therefore he left Corbyn with a choice. If he reversed that decision, then he exposes the party to accusations of fragmentation and differences, which the Tories and, of course, the press would have tried to highlight. Otherwise, he knew that this is Corbyn, and this is unfortunately what turned out to come to pass. Many of the electorate, especially people who did vote to leave the European Union, felt as though that was an affront to democracy. And I won't get into the argument about how legally binding the result of a referendum was. I know that was obviously a massive thing. We went through all of that for 4 frigging years. So it's absolutely an affront that Keith can stand there and try to claim to be defending democracy, and also wondering why people are so disillusioned with politics and with politicians at the moment. And if you ever want to, support people's excuse on abstaining from voting as being that they're all the same, they're being politicians, then all they're doing is accelerating that, amplifying that. We're going to see a low turnout of this next general election, I think. And it's for that exact reason. That's why people are so sick of politics, Keith, just in case you didn't know. Maybe if you actually took a look at society and said it like it was, instead of just making shit up and trying to make, what's the word I'm looking for? Trying to get those sound bites for the news, then you might actually see what's going on. But he's, of course, just too busy trying to progress his own career.
I came into politics late, having served our country as leader of the Crown Prosecution Service.
Wondergut, welcome to standard membership. And Sharon Whitlock, thanks a lot for your solidarity in joining the channel. There's going to be more exclusive content, etc. coming soon. Please do check out the perks. Anybody who's listening, if you're interested in getting a membership, just 99p. Lots to enjoy there. So you're very welcome. Thanks a lot for showing solidarity in that way.
And I helped the police service in Northern Ireland to gain the consent of all communities. Service of our country is the reason and the only reason why I am standing here now asking for your vote. And I believe with patience, determination, and that commitment to service, there is so much pride and potential.
I wouldn't have, thought that he was stood there asking for people's votes the way he's just been harping on. It's so repellent, and well, we'll see what happens on July the 4th. I'll probably be going into that a lot over the next 6 weeks, of course. But whatever you do, don't let this bastard in.
We can unlock across our country. So here it is, the future of the country in your hands. On the 4th of July, you have the choice. And together, we can stop the chaos, we can turn the page, we can start to rebuild Britain.
You can start to dig up the most overused and elderly political metaphors, similes, etc. and just keep trying to throw them around and hope that that works. Hey, Starmer. that's more or less what he had to say. And again, I recall, 5 to 10 years ago when Corbyn would come on the television and actually, say it like it was and how encouraging that was. And now we're left with Starmer, Reeves, Lammy, Streeting, you name them, bar as many as you can count on your fingers. They're all just neoliberal careerists, basically. And they're not going to help out the working person, as I've just said. Right, we will get on to PMQs. Just one more very short clip to go through that I thought was pretty interesting, and it does pertain to Keith and the general election that's been called as well. Also today, you might not have heard about this with everything going on about the announcement, but there is a very interesting campaign going on in Starmer's seat, Holborn and St Pancras. Andrew Feinstein is putting up a really great campaign. He's been garnering a lot of support on social media and with volunteers and people really getting behind him. I would love, whatever the outcome of the election, to see Sunak and Starmer both lose their respective seats. So I'll wish Andrew Feinstein every success on July the 4th. That's going to be one of the hot seats that My Left Eye will be keeping an eye on in the run-up to the general election. And there will, of course, be live streams as the results come in as well. So hit the notification bell. You'll be able to stay tuned with all of that action. Andrew's officially announced his campaign today. There was an accompanying video that was going around social media, so I've just got that lined up for those of you who haven't seen it. And if you do live in that constituency, please do consider voting for him or check him out. If you go to his Twitter page, that's Andrew Feinstein, then you will find the video if you want to watch it again. And also there's a link underneath for if you live in the constituency or close by and you want to volunteer for his campaign. So please do check that out if you can. Free plug there for genuine socialists here, of course, as always, on My Left Eye. This is his campaign video, and then we'll get into PMQs.
My name is Andrew Feinstein. I'm standing as an independent parliamentary candidate in the constituency in which I've lived for around 23 years. The reason I'm standing is because I love this area, because I believe that everybody in this area deserves to engage with on a regular basis the person they elect to Parliament and whose salary they pay. Holborn and St Pancras has a housing crisis. We've seen massive investment in retail space, in office space, which obviously accrues greater income to the council. But this is at the expense of ordinary people who live in the constituency. There's not enough social housing. There's too much overcrowding. Repairs, if they happen, take forever to happen. And it makes daily life for people very difficult. We need to ensure that the residents most affected by this crisis and the authorities sit together, figure out what we're going to do about the housing situation in Holborn and St Pancras. We're at the student encampment at SOAS, what they're calling the liberated zone of SOAS. These students are camping in support of the people of Gaza and Palestine. Almost 60% of us want an immediate ban on arms sales to Israel. But our government and our opposition will not listen to us. I believe that many of us in Holborn and St Pancras don't want to have an election of no or little choice between the two main parties, who are both offering us permanent austerity, forever wars, and the socio-economic and climate degradation that comes with that. I don't believe in professional politicians. I think that whoever we in Holborn and St Pancras send to Parliament should be transparent and accountable to us, their constituents.
Andrew Feinstein there, yeah, I wish him every success. And just with what he was saying there at the end about him not being a professional politician, reminds me also to let you know, please do get involved with any local citizens' assemblies that you might find out about. Also check out the Humanity Project, for example, who are hosting assemblies all across the country. And there's going to be nationwide assemblies happening also, because with what Andrew mentioned there, you do get these career politicians, the careerists, of course, but, you know, I believe the Romans and other civilizations and cultures have used a method called sortition, whereby someone is randomly selected to be the leader, and if they're refused, then there will be fines, etc., punishments imposed. So you were left with no choice, and that's how... well, the thinking behind that basically is that you don't get careerists, and that people will have a genuine incentive to make their communities better. But that's another matter entirely. JC, yeah, I won't like it if Sunak and the Tories do stay in. I won't be surprised, given how pathetic Labour are at the moment. But it's... as we say in the UK, like being stuck between the devil and the deep blue sea. So I won't be happy if Keir Starmer wins either. And they're both just one and the same to me, but that would not surprise me. At the moment, although there's going to be so much analysis over the next 6 weeks to pour over, I'm going to be adding my contributions as well, of course. I think that at the moment it's leaning towards a hung parliament, as I mentioned on the video that I did just after the local elections, which I think are a pretty decent indicator at the moment. And of course there was that projection as well that said that Labour would fall around 25-30 seats short of getting a majority. So those are the early indications, and that's one of the hot seats. Quickly mention as well, on the last live stream on Sunday as well, I went into Paul Mason, who's decided to challenge Jeremy Corbyn in North Islington, which is, you know, what do you want to say? He's got to be a masochist or something, or it's just pure hubris. He is from the northwest, of course, 200 miles away from North Islington, and he's only done this out of pure hubris because it's Jeremy Corbyn's seat, although it's not very well founded hubris, of course. I'm still expecting Corbyn to win the seat by quite a lot, even during the so-called disastrous 19 election, which wasn't Labour's worst result ever, but Corbyn still got a massive majority. Just a quick note on that as well. You'll hear that coming up a lot over the next 6 weeks about Corbyn. Gordon Brown lost 91 seats in 2010. That's 50% more than Jeremy Corbyn lost at the last election. Right, on to PMQs, on to the bulk of the stream now. Let us know your thoughts about that story, of course, if you're watching back on a replay. Or you can post in the chat as well. Let's just get straight into it.
Mr. Speaker, can I also add my personal welcome back to Parliament to my friend and colleague, the Honourable Member for South London. No one who watched his interview last night could have failed to have been in awe of his incredible resilience. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Jen Kitchen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too welcome the Honourable Member for South Thanet back to the House and wish him well in his duties. Can I also associate my remarks with the Prime Minister? The Association of Dental Groups in their May 2022 report identified my constituency, Wellingborough, as one of England's dental deserts. I welcomed the Prime Minister's grand scheme to send dental
And actually, and we know that the plan is now delivering, because since it was announced in January, over 500 more dental practices are now accepting new patients. And I'd also just...
Oh, well, just a couple of points. This is the first time in a while that I've seen Labour lead with the opening question. You normally get at least 2 or 3 that are just the planted, arse-kissy, brown-nosing type questions. And yeah, these are obvious. Anytime you hear the Tories trying to gloss about statistics, they're always false. They've either moved the goalposts or anything. Just before he does go on, I'm going to bring up the scoreboard. So we're going to count how many times Rishi Sunak says stop the boats and how many times it's mentioned that Keir Starmer's a lawyer, always die, former director of public prosecutions. So 0-0. It was actually 0-0 last week, 4-1 the week before. Quite shocking. Just after, or just before the local elections as well. Just after even, that you didn't get a mention of stop the boats from Sunak. But just a reminder, this is my genuine reaction. I have no idea if it's going to be mentioned at all.
Point out to the Honourable Lady that compared to the party opposite's plan, what we are doing is producing more than twice the number of extra appointments to get people the treatment they need.
Elliot Colburn. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today's news on inflation is not just good news for consumers in Carshalton and Wallington, but also for capital projects like the investment into St Helier Hospital and to build a second hospital in my constituency.
No idea who this guy is. He's probably going to go at the next election. Yeah, thanks, Sharon. It is painful. Nonetheless, call me Lefty. Of course, I forgot to introduce myself properly at the top of the stream. Welcome as well to Mithril. Thanks a lot. It's great to see you back here again. Hope you're well this evening. How are things over in Morecambe? Are you excited about the general election announcements? Great to see you.
Constituency protecting A&E and maternity locally. Given that good news on the economy, will the Prime Minister recommit today to working with the NHS in my area to build that second hospital, improve St Helier Hospital, and agree that you can only underpin a strong NHS with a strong economy?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, we are investing in better healthcare right across our country, and I'm delighted to see that Epsom and St Helier University NHS Trust was recently allocated over £6 million to upgrade the A&E and will benefit from a new specialist emergency care hospital in Sutton as part of the programme. But as my honourable friend said, that is only possible...
What happened to the 40 new hospitals? How long ago was that now? A decade?
Today's figures show that the plan is working, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure the whole House, including perhaps the Leader of the Opposition, will welcome the news that inflation is now back to normal.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
I want to begin by saying a few words to the Honourable Member for Thanet South. Firstly, thank you for meeting me privately this morning with your wife and daughter so I could personally convey my best wishes to all of you. Secondly, on some occasions, and there aren't many, this House genuinely comes together as one, and we do so today to pay tribute to your courage and determination in not only coming through an awful ordeal, but by being here today with us in this chamber. And thirdly, I want to acknowledge your deep sense of service. I think politics is about service, and resuming your duties as an MP, being here today, shows us it's an example for all of us of your deep sense of service, and we thank you for it. I also welcome Figan Murray, who is up in the gallery. She lost her son Martin 7 years ago today in the Manchester Arena attacks, and we remember everybody who was lost in that awful attack. She's campaigning for Martin's Law, which we must make a reality as soon as possible. Mr. Speaker, the infected blood scandal reflects a profound failure across almost every part of the British state. On Monday in our apologies and yesterday on the question of compensation, this House was united. But too many times we've heard similar sentiments from that dispatch box and from this one. There are many hard yards to go, So does the Prime Minister agree with me that we will only now make real progress if we finally tackle the lack of openness, transparency and candour that Sir Brian Langstaff identified as having prolonged the victim's suffering for decades?
Minister.
Well, that's always rich coming from Keith. Quite a few examples. The Gaza Amendment comes to mind in terms of due process.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. The inquiry was established to get to the truth and provide answers, and this week's report represented a hugely significant moment for the community. This was an appalling scandal, and I think the whole House is grateful to the diligent work of all those who have supported Sir Brian Langstaff and the inquiry's work. And I also pay tribute to the bravery of every individual who has come forward and told their story in their fight for justice. Their voices have...
Yeah, this was a shocking case. I've actually not mentioned this in any videos yet. It's been obviously this huge scandal, the infected blood scandal. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. Much like Hillsborough, the Hillsborough scandal, the cover-ups, etc. I'm equally shocked, but unfortunately not surprised to see that still going on in this, well, in UK society. Anyway, given our leadership, etc. So, yeah, just wanted to throw that in as well. Sorry to hear you've not been well, Mithril, and your car's poorly too. Oh, sorry to hear that, but you're off on your holidays, so hope you have a good time. Let us know where... oh, you're going to Scotland? Oh, it's lovely up there. I've not been for a while, but yeah. Always have a nice time in Scotland. Speaking of which, can't wait to hear from Stephen Flynn this week. Let's crack on.
Have now finally been heard, and I agree with the honourable gentleman. We will listen to them and ensure that nothing like this can ever happen in our country again.
Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The infected blood scandal is shocking, truly shocking, but it's not unique. The story is familiar. Concerns raised but ignored, reports written but not acted on, victims and their families campaigning for years just to be heard. So I want to focus in, if I may, on the duty of candour, or lack of it, which has been a failing in scandal after scandal, injustice after injustice, from Grenfell to Horizon, Hillsborough, and now infected blood. And I've read the government has called for evidence about the duty of candour in health.
Hey, Keith, stop stealing my lines. Yeah, this is a genuine reaction, I assure you, 100%. I've not even seen any snippets of it or anything. Yeah, get your own bloody lines, Keith. Has Angela fallen asleep there, or have I just paused it at the right moment? Rachel Reeves looks particularly psychotic. Well, she did earlier anyway. Goodness me. What a set of
But
girls.
I can't think of a single example where that duty of candour should not apply to all public servants across the board. And I don't think it's possible for any of us to stand at these dispatch boxes and honestly say, never again, unless we address it. So does the Prime Minister agree that the time has now come for the duty of candour to be clearly enshrined in law across the board?
Mr. Speaker, I am, of course, aware of the recommendation made by Sir Brian Langstaff in the final report of the inquiry in relation to...
It's still 0-0. He could have got in a mention that he's a lawyer there, but he didn't take it.
It is important that the government takes time to fully digest the gravity of the findings of the report. The wrongs which have been committed are devastating and life-altering for so many. Ensuring that nothing like this ever happens again is a priority, and of course we are sympathetic to that and going through the recommendations in detail at the moment before providing a comprehensive response. But of course, given the situation and the gravity of the findings, it's a recommendation that there is an enormous amount of sympathy for.
Keir Starmer.
Thank you. I understand the Prime Minister wants to look at the recommendations in detail and to come back to them in due course. But we can't look away on this duty of candour. So can I at least ask the Prime Minister to expand the call for evidence on the duty of candour beyond health? And we do owe that to the victims.
So he's trying to play this scandal off. He's trying to kick it around like a political football, like he would racism as well. I think it's quite pathetic to see him just trying to pick anything to try and criticise Sunak for on this issue. It's just been a massive scandal.
Have been replicated in others, and I mentioned Hillsborough specifically. So I'm very aware that there are structural and behavioural cultural problems that we do need to fix. The duty of candour is something that, as I said, the principle, and there is an enormous amount of support for the principle of and sympathy for.
Yeah, Sharon. Yeah, I'm kind of going for that football commentator thing when I do mention the stop the boats versus I'm a lawyer as well. You know. Stop the boats, nil. I'm a lawyer, nil. That game's still ongoing.
He will understand we are digesting the full contents of the report, but of course we want to right the wrongs of the past and crucially ensure that nothing like this happens ever again.
Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In his report, Sir Brian identified individual failures, a number of them, even cover-ups. But alongside that, he also found equally important and harder to reach institutional and cultural failings, including in the NHS. A defensive attitude which refused to acknowledge problems, the silencing of those who raised concerns, and a total failure of leadership when faced with the truth. Now, the NHS does a remarkable job every day, but that is indefensible. Does the Prime Minister agree that the very culture of the NHS needs to change?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and again, I think
I'll just refer back to what Starmer thinks about doctors and nurses going on strike. Also, Wes Streeting's enthusiasm for further privatisation of the NHS.
In response specifically to the question from our honourable friend, the member for Bromsgrove, we discussed this on Monday, and the NHS, of course, provides life-saving care to so many people every single day, for which we're enormously grateful. But it is absolutely clear, as the report makes crystal clear, that there were significant failings. The NHS failed. It failed people, it let them down. It's right that they are held accountable for that and learn the lessons. Now, there clearly have been improvements and changes in medical practice since that time, but going forward, we need to go through the full recommendations of Sir Brian Langstaff's report and hold the NHS to account for bringing through the changes that are necessary.
We need reform, we need change, and I've seen firsthand how important reform is during my time running the Crown Prosecution Service.
There you go.
But
It's
I
1-0
also
to
saw
Keith.
how
He's
hard
taking a rare lead.
I also saw how hard it is, particularly on cultural issues. It requires brave decisions and difficult decisions. Now, 11 years ago, the Health Secretary, as Health Secretary, the now Chancellor said, the era of gagging NHS staff from raising their worries about patient care must come to an end. But 11 years on and 10 months on from the Lucy Lefty case, there are still clear examples of NHS managers still gagging staff and then being moved on instead of being moved out. So will the Prime Minister now commit to ensuring that those who do gag and silence whistleblowers will no longer be able to work in the NHS?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, of course.
Oh, and how many people has Keir Starmer kicked out of the Labour Party recently just for speaking the truth? Honestly, and that was a classic delivery of mentioning his former Director of Public Prosecutions, don't you know? And his dad was a toolmaker, in case he'd never made mention of that before.
Of course, the behaviour that the honourable gentleman describes is wrong and I believe already is illegal under our laws, but we will make sure that people do have the ability to raise concerns. And one thing that I know has given many of those who have been impacted by this scandal some reassurance is the appointment of Sir Robert Francis to be chair of inquiry, who obviously is someone who not just has a wealth of experience dealing with this particular set of issues, but has a long track record of working with the NHS as well on the issues that the honourable gentleman raises.
Keir Starmer.
Sir Brian's report is a victory for all those campaigners and victims who fought so hard for this moment, including the Right Honourable Member for Hull North. But it's also one of profound pain, anger and sadness for so many. Now, there is a chance for us to make real progress on this issue, and we must do that with victims in mind. Now, given the degree of cross-party consensus that we've already seen on apologies and compensation, and given the government's promise to ensure compensation by the end of the year...
There's your so-called cross-party consensus, Keith.
...to deliver on all the recommendations in the same timeframe by the end of the year.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, of course, we want to deliver on the recommendations as quickly as practically possible, and indeed our expectation is that we can do that before the end of the year. But Sir Robert's appointment, as I said, will bring a wealth of experience, and it was crucial that the Chair had the knowledge and the expertise and familiarity with the issues here. His support for delivering the scheme and making sure that compensation can be paid by the end of the year, I think, will be invaluable. He talked about the community, and over the next few weeks, Sir Robert will seek views from the infected blood community, specifically on the proposed scheme, to make sure that the scheme will best serve those it is intended for. And our shared priority is delivering compensation to all those infected and affected.
I know this is an awful scandal, and so many families were affected and so many lives lost over this scandal, but they have been on it for quite a bit now. They both seem to be wanting to milk this while they're... obviously, this was pre-election announcement, but they want to be seen as the party who knows the best on this issue, with it being in the media so much at the moment, and probably will be for quite a while now. Getting the early hustings in again, or trying to.
Affected with absolutely minimum delay, and begin bringing justice to all of those impacted.
Tadej Krug.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 1997, the public voted in what they were told would be a sort of continuity Conservative government, the same policies, just with different faces. Instead, what they got...
What? No. That was quite right. That was quite right. When Margaret Thatcher was asked what her greatest political achievement was, she said Tony Blair. When Tony Blair was asked who he considered to be of the most influence to him in politics, he immediately said Margaret Thatcher. If you're going to say any different, then I'll remind everybody that it was Tony Blair that removed Clause 4 within the Labour Party, which stipulated that it was a democratic socialist party.
got was record immigration, constitutional vandalism and a broken economy. Does the Prime Minister agree that with the economy now roaring back to life under a Conservative government, the last thing...
The worldwide economy of the housing market crashed in 2008 because of deregulation in the 1980s, which was mostly accelerated by the late Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. Okay? It did happen on Labour's watch. The fact that Sinclair bailed out the bankers was, of course, disgusting. But if you're talking about creating the circumstances that led to that massive market crash, which had shockwaves all across the globe, then that happened on Thatcher's watch, pal. Okay, I'm not defending Tony Blair or Gordon Brown, but at least tell it like it is, or like it was.
We needed to return to the failed Labour recipe of high taxes, open borders, unemployment laws.
That was because of deregulation in the stock market, basically, without going into it too much. Should have mentioned that there as well. This is just going to be your general dig at Labour, even though the people he's referring to aren't seated opposite. Who's left from 1997?
That destroy jobs.
apart from Corbyn. Diane Abbott. Oh,
Speaker,
she's not even Labour now. Neither of them are. What am I on
Speaker,
about?
my honourable friend gives a superb and passionate
That
economic
just proves my point.
diagnosis, and he's right. Inflation is now back to normal, and indeed lower than France, Germany, the United States, at its lowest level.
It's not, Sunak. That's bollocks. That's bollocks. It's not back to normal. It's still high. It's just not as high as it was before. Prices are increasing. Just because a line on a graph to you looks different doesn't mean that people who go out there on the street when they're buying the food at the market, in the supermarket, wherever they get it from, that those prices aren't increasing, along with everything else. Back to normal. Back to normal. What the hell is that even supposed to mean?
Years, our economy is growing faster, wages are rising, and that's why we need to stick to the plan that is working, Mr. Speaker. And he's right to point out the risks of what the Labour Party proposed. 70 new laws, 70 new laws. They've caved in to their union paymasters, and what does that mean? It means it will cost jobs and damage our economic recovery.
MP leader Stephen Flynn.
Again, in the same breath as trying to say that he's helping out working people, he condemns the unions without realising what unions consist of, and that is working people. You absolute idiot. I mean, talk about gaslighting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I begin by also welcoming the member from South Thanet back to the chamber.
Here we go,
he is
finally.
indeed an inspiration to all of us. Mr. Speaker, speculation is rife, so I think the public deserve a clear answer to a simple question. Does the Prime Minister intend to call a summer general election, or is he feared?
Oh, I think I'll hazard a guess at that one. Yes. Although, okay, all right. Now, retrospectively, now we'll see Sunak's train of thoughts as it happened. So he would have known full well when he was answered that question that he was going to be making the announcement later today. MPs do, of course, have parliamentary privilege. You'll remember a while back that's how a gagging order was sort of gotten around when an MP mentioned a famous footballer, Ryan Giggs, who was in the papers for having an affair with his wife, for example. But Flynn's free to use his parliamentary privilege and ask whatever the heck he likes within certain limits. So let's just see how Sunak will respond, even though he already knows the answer to this question, which he's going to dodge. Will he try and deflect and say we're stopping the boats for an equaliser? Let's see.
Mr. Speaker, as I have said repeatedly to him...
Oh, we've heard that nervous laugh before, haven't we? We've heard that nervous laugh. Yep. The old ha-ha. That's a bit of a giveaway now. I don't know if Rishi Sunak is a poker player. I would recommend he doesn't take it up. He won't be very good at it. Although he's welcome to come and play against me anytime he likes. Only because he'll lose. I mean, only because he'll lose. Just to be very clear about that. And there's laughter going through the house now.
There is.
I'm pretty sure they all
spoiler
knew
alert,
that.
there is going to be a general election in the second half of this year, and at that moment, the British people will in fact see the truth about the honourable gentleman opposite me, because that will be the choice at the next election, Mr. Speaker. A party that is not able to say to the country...
Just barely into the second half of the year, it now transpires in the 7th month.
What they would do, a party that would put at risk our hard-earned economic stability, or the Conservatives that are delivering a secure future for our United Kingdom.
Mr. Speaker, he continues to play games with the public, but whilst he does that, let's get back to some serious matters. Because I was taken aback this week when a former Prime Minister spoke some sense. Alas, it was indeed David Cameron, because what he said was that in relation to graduate route visas.
I think you'll find it's pronounced hammering, Stephen. Hammering.
If any restrictions are implemented, it will lead to job losses, it will lead to university closures, it will lead to a reduction in research. And University Scotland's outlines £5 billion of economic value at risk. So can I ask the Prime Minister, does he agree with the Foreign Secretary?
The Foreign Secretary also said that the levels of legal migration to this country are too high, Mr. Speaker, and that's what I believe also, which is why it is right that we are taking decisive action to bring the numbers down. And, Mr. Speaker, that plan is working. In the first 3 months of this year, the visas issued...
Okay, not sure whether he didn't actually say stop the boats. Was that close enough? What do you think? I'll tell you what, I'll give you 10 seconds in the chat if you think that was an equaliser for Sunak. Then say so now. Otherwise, I'll leave the score at 1-0 to Keith. 10 seconds. I don't have the countdown theme tune lined up. That counts. Okay, Mithril. It's 1-1. Right, on we go. I'll change the score.
Are down by 25%, Mr. Speaker. Migration is on its way to being returned to more sustainable levels, and I appreciate that is a point of difference between the Honourable Gentleman's Party and indeed the Labour Party and us. We believe that the level of migration needs to come down to more sustainable levels, so we ease the pressure on public services, and everyone who comes to our country must indeed contribute economically. That's the migration system we will deliver.
Simon Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the Welsh borders, we're incredibly proud of the Veterans Centre at the Robert Jones and Agnes Hunt Orthopaedic Hospital in North Shropshire, which not only treats veterans locally, including from my constituency of Clwyd South, but also from across Britain, as it is the largest hospital-based veterans service in the UK. Would the Prime Minister help resolve the Centre's current funding crisis caused by changes in the NHS funding formula last year, given the fantastic treatment provided by Lieutenant Carl Mayer and his team for our amazing veterans community across the UK?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank my honourable friend for raising this important issue? We are committed to making the UK the best place in the world to be a veteran and ensuring that they have access to the appropriate physical and mental health support they deserve. That's why we've rolled out Operation Restore, Op Courage and Op Nova, and I know that NHS England have been introducing actually a suite of health services to work more closely with orthopaedic services. But I know my honourable friend has raised this issue of funding with the Minister of Veteran Affairs, and he'll be writing back to my honourable friend with an update in due course.
David.
Join others in welcoming back to the House.
So it will look like we're doing something and then we'll just ignore the problem.
Say how much we admire his courage and send our best wishes to him and his family. And also join others in remembering all the victims.
Now, here's something pretty interesting that I've noticed. Bit of a bounce back for the Lib Dems at the last local election, but they've certainly done it by stealth. And in terms of gains, they certainly did a lot better than Labour did as a percentage. So they've been very quiet. Obviously, they got decimated in 2019, haven't had a very strong presence on the opposite benches, of course. But now, is this the first that we've seen of Ed Davey coming out of his shell? This is the first time that I can recall seeing him speak on PMQs recently, although correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But that just seems to be a kind of hidden factor going into towards the 4th of July, which I could say now that we've got a date set, but was that their tactic the whole time? They've done very little and just softly they're hoping they're going to gain those lost votes from the 2019 election when, of course, Swinton had the bollocks to Brexit policy, which lost them so many votes. And just goodness knows what happens to her. She's in the political wilderness now. But, let us know what you think about that in the chat or comments if you're watching on a replay. Thanks for joining us tonight on My Left Eye. I'm your host, Lefty. If you've not done so already, please do hit subscribe, thumbs up buttons, etc. You can consider joining the channel for just 99p, or hit the super thanks, or check out the link to the Buy Me a Coffee page where you can show solidarity and support the channel for just the price of a tasty hot beverage. What said Davey got to say?
Of the bombing at Manchester Arena. Mr. Speaker, Amanda claimed carer's allowance when caring for her mother, but the DWP is now hounding her to pay back £1,200. Karina, whose daughter requires round-the-clock care, has been hit by a bill for £11,000. Victoria is being forced to pay back £100 a month. Just some of the tens of thousands of carers, victims of the DWP's flawed system, punished harshly for going sometimes just a few pounds over the arbitrary earnings limit. So, Mr. Speaker, family carers do a remarkable job. They shouldn't be penalised for working or for the DWP's own failures. So does the Prime Minister agree that the government should be supporting carers, not persecuting them?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the government recognises the contribution and sacrifices that carers up and down the country so often make. To care for others, and that's why we've increased carers' allowance by almost £1,500 since 2010. It's why we introduced carers' leave, and indeed it's why the Better Care Fund funds respite care breaks for carers, which have been, I know, warmly welcomed and used. Now, in the rare number of cases where individuals haven't appropriately informed DWP,
of course, carers have been victims of Tory cuts over the last 15 years.
As they would be expected to, in order to ensure the integrity of the system and protecting the taxpayer. But of course, they will work with anyone who is struggling with their repayment terms and will always look to negotiate an affordable repayment plan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may I also extend my welcome to the Honourable Member for Thanet South. The £8 billion made available by the government for the repair of roads and potholes is very welcome. However, some local authorities, such as Cambridgeshire County Council and Peterborough City Council, which serve my constituency, sometimes use inferior material, so the works need to be done again in a few months' time. And that's an issue that applies to many constituencies across the country. So will the Prime Minister use his influence to...
And look who's there, over Vara's right shoulder, as we look the forlorn face of former Prime Minister Theresa May. I think that expression sums up what the Tories know is coming for them at the next election. They're going to take a drubbing, whether or not they cling on by a small majority or not. A lot of the people who you can see here on the Tory side of the benches are going to lose their seats, and the party's definitely going to take a drubbing. But she more or less sums it up perfectly there. I'm not sure, but I would expect that we're going to see an appearance from Count Binface. Again, that just reminded me. He's formerly stood in her seat in Maidstone. And we'll just have to see. Something else to keep your eye on. I think Elmo was one of them as well, if I remember rightly. From Sesame Street, someone just stood as Elmo. It did okay. It didn't do too bad, actually. Oh, speaking of which, Binface actually got more votes than the Britain First. Was it the Yeah, it was the Britain First candidate in the last local elections as well, which I thought was quite amusing.
Ensure that there are tough quality specifications so that the repairs can last much longer.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud that we've announced an additional £8 billion for roads resurfacing over the next decade, money made available through the reallocation of HS2 fundings, and that will mean fewer potholes and smoother, safer roads across our country. But I agree with my right honourable friend. It is of the utmost importance that these repairs are completed with high-quality materials, and I join him in calling on Cambridgeshire County Council and Peterborough Council to make sure that they deliver that for his residents.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the small hours of Saturday morning, I received an email, and I apologise for my language, Mr. Speaker, calling me a fucking parasite, a rat, and a piece of shit.
Jesus.
This came in response to...
Okay, wasn't expecting that. Wasn't expecting that. But I can't believe I'm going to have to hear that again. Sorry, I can't believe my ears. Where's this email coming from?
Mr. Speaker, in the wee small hours of Saturday morning, I received an email, and I apologise for my language, Mr. Speaker, calling me a fucking parasite, a rat, and a piece of shit. This came in response to my challenge.
Well, you can't, again, parliamentary privilege. I'm surprised that that's come up again, but he can get away with that sort of language. This obviously goes out live at dinner time, or lunchtime, as most of you probably know it. I'm from the north of England. It's dinner time up here, and that's all I've got to say on that matter. But unbelievable. So what's this all about?
The appropriateness of a US citizen, Michael Francesi, who is doing a tour in the UK, and as part of that tour advocating publicly for the self-proclaimed misogynist influencers Andrew and Tristan Tate, who are encouraging toxic attitudes among young men in this country. Can I ask the Prime Minister...
Yeah, these guys, these so-called alpha males, are just utter douchebags. They're absolute pieces of crap. I suppose that's narcissism for you. The language used in that email towards the MP is actually just them describing themselves.
But also our immigration regime to make sure we have security and cohesion in this country.
Sir John Whittingdale.
Mr. Speaker, the population of Malden is rising rapidly, and for over 20 years my constituents have been promised a new hospital. Yet Mid and South Essex ICB are now proposing to close the existing St Peter's Hospital.
So they quickly brushed over that.
My constituents and those of my right honourable friend for Whittam having to travel up to 30 miles for some treatments. Will my right honourable friend ask ministers to tell the ICB...
He's surprised. Why he's surprised, Sir John Whittingdale of Malden, that there are fewer hospitals after the decade and a half where we've been through the rinser with the fucking Tory party.
For his commitment to his constituents. I know that he and my right honourable friend, the member for Witham, met both the Minister of State for Health and Secondary Care and the Minister for Social Care recently to discuss this. I understand that the ICB have extended their consultation by 3 weeks to ensure that more consideration could be given and voices could be heard, but I will ensure that the...
I'm sure that Penny Mordaunt's sitting there just thinking about her next career move. She's wondering, is my head on the block? Am I going to go at the next general election? I should probably just get myself a position in a bank or a private insurance firm. Or maybe a director of a telecommunications company. Who knows? Who knows? So, it goes back and forth, all this dirty money. Like you're pointing out in the chat there, Mithril, yeah, exactly. Dingo Harding is another example of that. Michelle Mone, of course, all these missing... or misappropriated, should we say, millions and billions of pounds. I think it's a shame that Matt Hancock won't be standing at the next election just so that we won't be able to get him take an absolute spanking, for example. Absolutely vile person, and that's just the way that this system works.
Relevant minister keeps my right honourable friend updated on the progress of this.
John Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent has recently applied to move from her council home because she can no longer walk up the stairs and she is in constant pain. She has been waiting for a knee operation for over 2 years and she has become progressively worse. She feels forgotten and neglected. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that his government is failing and this country is waiting for a Labour government to bring down...
Okay, so essentially that was very similar to the question that just came from the Tory benches about a problem within the NHS, apart from that little adage at the end about whether a Labour government, would be better than the Tories. Just going to compare, I'm just saying that to predictably compare responses here. You obviously heard Sunak trying to be very sympathetic towards a member of his own party, but I'll very strongly expect him to get up and start to give out to this Labour MP and proceed as he always does into a party political broadcast, and could see a 2-1 lead coming up, I'm not sure.
NHS waiting list.
Mr. Speaker, of course, I'm sorry to hear about the experience of the honourable lady's constituent, and we are putting more money, rolling out more elective surgical hubs to bring the waiting list down. She talks about the difference that the Labour Party would make to the NHS. Her constituents would just look to Wales to see what is happening when it comes to the NHS. A quarter of the Welsh population on a waiting list. The worst emergency care performance in Great Britain. People on long waiting lists 5 times more than they are in England, and on average, people waiting 40% longer for treatment. That's the reality of Labour in the NHS. Failing.
40 years ago, Mrs Thatcher described high inflation as a destroyer of industry, of jobs and savings. Does my right honourable friend agree that that sentiment is as true today as it was then? And what assessment does he make of today's announcement for my Gedling constituents who want to be able to save, get a good job and enjoy a reasonable standard cost of living?
Well, my honourable friend is
right.
I'm
advised that they don't vote Tory for a bloody start.
Not only have we halved inflation, but it has returned back to normal thanks to the collective hard work and sacrifice and resilience of people up and down the country. And this is further proof that our plan is working. Mortgage rates have come down, energy bills have come down, taxes are being
These
cut,
are all
and
lies.
inflation
Oh my God, this is.
That shows that when you stick to the plan, we
Where's
can
Hoyle?
to a brighter
It's
future.
appalling that he could stand there and say whatever he likes. This is the opposite of the truth. Come on, Hoyle. For God's sake. Hope he goes as well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. England's Chief Medical Officer said that reducing sewage in rivers and seas is a public health priority, highlighting the problems dumping untreated sewage causes. Even the treated sewage, which is continuously discharged into rivers and seas, contains faecal matter. Water firms are now asking for bills to go up by up to 91% when they've paid out billions to shareholders and neglected pipework and infrastructure. So, Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister tell me why is his government allowing these companies to destroy our waterways and make obscene levels of profit whilst making people ill?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the level of overflows we've seen is unacceptable, but we have gone further than any other government, monitoring 100% of overflows, up from only 7% under Labour, investing record amounts in our
literal crap. We're up to our knees in crap. We're going to be up to our necks in crap soon. Look at what Therese Coffey did during her tenure as Environment Secretary. There are no clean waterways left in Britain. Not a one. Not a one. And you're letting all these bastards dump literal crap in there and get away with it.
So I very much welcome the recent announcement on artificial intelligence in the delivery of radiotherapy. But will my right honourable friend commit to us going further and faster in the rollout and realising the potential of AI and the latest, most innovative medtech across our NHS, benefiting, of course, patients, but also...
Oh, God. Regular viewers of the channel know that rollout is one of my trigger phrases that I think just has been overused so much during the Tory government, especially during the pandemic as well. Got absolutely sick of it. And now deliver is becoming the new rollout as well, one I'm already sick of hearing. There's still 6 weeks to go until the next election.
Clinicians.
Prime Minister.
I agree with my honourable friend that we need to ensure our NHS is a world leader in medical innovation, which is why yesterday we announced funding to roll out game-changing AI to radiotherapy departments in England. And the benefits are clear because that technology can locate cancer cells to an...
Thanks a lot for your comments as well. Yeah, Sharon, I agree with your comments about Matt Hancock there. He always seemed particularly dim to me, very poorly trained, doing the media rounds, but nothing going on between the ears whatsoever. But he did like standing close to interns. You're right there, Vicky Clee. Welcome to you as well. And also Andy. Yeah, you shouldn't let the water companies increase bills. They should fall. We should have nationalised utilities. I completely agree that should be the solution. But of course, if energy bills came down by 7 to 9 times as they would with renewables, for example, then that means less private profit, and there's not much incentive there for the shareholders. Won't someone please think of the wealthy shareholders? You know, let's shed a tear or two for those brave, hard-working people, right? What can you say?
1.5 times quicker than doctors alone. But we won't stop there. We recognise the huge potential, and that's why the productivity plan announced in the spring budget will modernise the NHS and ensure our patients get the care that they deserve.
Val Ribeiro Addy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In recent days, the Trussell Trust revealed that its network handed out more than 3.1 million emergency food parcels in the past year, and that's the most it's ever distributed and nearly double the number 5 years ago. Absolute poverty among children in this country has risen by its highest rate of 30 years, and a quarter of all children in this country live below that poverty line. 2/3 of UK children in poverty live in families where at least one parent works. My constituency, Streatham, is one of the worst affected. So, Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister have any plans to restore the Child Poverty Unit, or to address the calls for universal free school meals, or report on any government plans aimed at tackling child poverty at all?
No,
Mr. Speaker,
not whatsoever.
Nobody wants to see any child grow up in poverty, and that's why I'm pleased that the record of this and previous governments has reduced not just the number of people living in...
That's bollocks. We've got record food bank usage, record child famine rates in the country.
We've extended the holiday activity and food programme with £200 million of funding, and we're investing £30 million in our National School Breakfast programme, which will now run...
Did he say £2 million there? £2 million for a scheme for £2 million that's got to go between the entire population, a population of 60 million people, and all of the children in that population have £2 million between them as a one-off? Or are my ears playing tricks on me?
Until the end of the summer term.
Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The best ways of helping people with the cost of living is to cut their taxes, keep unemployment...
It's poverty, it's not the cost of living. Stop with the manufactured lexicon syntax. It's poverty, the cost of living crisis.
Very welcome news of today's reduction in inflation going to help both businesses and families with the costs they face?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is exactly right in his analysis of how to help working families and our country. And thanks to the difficult decisions we have taken, inflation today is back to normal, which is a very welcome moment. Of course, there's more work to do. Of course, people are only just starting to feel the benefits, but it's clear that the plan is working. And that's why we have also been able to deliver significant tax cuts worth
He's doing the forget about the last 15 years where different things are starting to work. We've got this long-term plan, the long-term section of that statement being the most important point, because he expects people to have faith in his government across another parliament or two for the actual, real Tory plan to come into effect. Just dire and wanton, really.
£900 to the average worker in our country. This is all progress that would absolutely be put at risk by the party opposite.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Harland and Wolff is an iconic cornerstone of the UK's future shipbuilding, defence and energy capabilities. Harland and Wolff, a Safe 4 shipyard from administration, invested millions and now employs 1,500 workers across England, Scotland and Northern Ireland, many of whom are my constituents. Approval of the company's export development guarantee is crucial to consolidate this progress. Will the Prime Minister ensure that this is achieved?
Minister. Well, can I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. The government is committed to supporting the UK shipbuilding sector right across the nation, and I've seen firsthand what companies like Harland and Wolff and the role that they play in the economy. Whilst I'll understand I can't comment specifically on the details of any individual case due to commercial sensitivity, I can assure him that we are working closely with Harland and Wolff in their request for a UKEF guaranteed loan. It is under consideration, and can I also pay tribute to the Right Honourable Member for East Belfast for all he does to be a strong advocate for the company too.
Jason McCartney.
Thank you.
Yeah, basically, if you're already rich, you don't have anything to worry about. We'll look after you. It's just poor people who we despise the most.
Unit at Huddersfield Royal Infirmary opened in the early hours of this morning. Will the Prime Minister join me in thanking the team at HRI, welcoming the new doctors and nurses who have been recruited for the A&E unit, and does he agree with me that alongside the...
Jeremy God, it's written down here somewhere. Hunt certainly had a bit of a grin on his face then, of course. He used to be in charge of the NHS, responding to this gloating question. Earlier on, I was going to point out, I was just sort of calculating where his eye line was heading with Rachel Reeves's. It looked like they were having an absolutely psychotic stirring contest between one another, but he's definitely perked up now, as opposed to the fella who's to the left of this guy, as we look, who looks absolutely high as a kite, or maybe he's just coming, having not been to bed from a long night out. We've seen that before in the House of Commons. Michael Gove, excuse me.
New teaching block at Greenhead College, the West Yorkshire Investment Zone and the Trans-Pennine Rail upgrade, it shows that we are delivering for my constituents in the Home and Combe Valleys and Lindley.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I congratulate my honourable friend and his constituents for the brand new A&E department at the Huddersfield Royal Hospital. It is, as he said, a real game changer for residents, and it's not the only piece of delivery in his area. He mentioned the Trans-Pennine Rail upgrade, delivering faster journeys, but also levelling up projects like Huddersfield's Open Market and the new teaching block.
This is the guy who scrapped HS2 going to Manchester. Unbelievable. These are difficult times 1 minute, and then you've never had it better the next.
Seeking arrest warrants for Israeli and Hamas leaders for war crimes and crimes against humanity. This House does not aid and abet Hamas, but it does aid and abet Israel through arms sales like components for Israeli F-35s, known as the most lethal fighter jet on earth, which are raining down hell on Gaza. So, will the Prime Minister uphold international law, drop the nonsense about the most robust licensing system in the world, and end arms sales to Israel? And if the ICC issues arrest warrants, will he comply and ensure that these individuals are arrested if they enter the UK?
Zara Sultana there. Yeah, great as always. One of the few fine Labour MPs that are remaining, of course, and to her left, from our point of view, Rebecca Long-Bailey, you can see there as well. That's, you know, a fair question, and that must really make Starmer's piss boil, hearing a Labour member putting that question to the Prime Minister, of course, but she's got a very strong majority in commentary, and I expect her to maintain that at the next general election as well. Let's see Sunak's response. Remember the three responses that he'll always give. Blah, blah, blah. Compliance with international law. Looking into things. Investigations, etc. Stance on weapons and arms sales will not change. Or he says that Israel has a right to defend itself. this being Zara Sultana, I won't be surprised if he's particularly pernicious in his response as well. He'll probably try and bring up former leader of the opposition. I've just noticed that he's not tried to do the anti-Semitism trope yet, but we'll see. Just reminded by that as we see Rebecca Long-Bailey and Zara Sultana in the same shot.
Fighter jet on Earth, which are raining down hell on Gaza. So, will the Prime Minister uphold international law, drop the nonsense about the most robust licensing system in the world, and end arms sales to Israel? And if the ICC issues arrest warrants, will he comply and ensure that these individuals are arrested if they enter the UK?
Mr. Speaker, always nice to see the Change Labour Party in action.
What I say?
When it comes to the ICC, this is a deeply unhelpful development, Mr. Speaker, which is, of course, still subject to a final decision. There is no moral equivalence between a democratically elected government exercising its lawful rights to self-defence.
Yeah, and of course, obviously, that's one of the three responses, as I said. About the legitimacy of the ICC, there were many on the right who called for Vladimir Putin to be referred to the ICC when the Russia-Ukraine conflict escalated. Not that I'm defending Putin. I'm not a fan of either Putin or Zelensky, personally. I think they're both right-wing warmongers. But that's another matter entirely. It's just given his atypical response there. But the point is that the ICC is legitimate. If this warrant for arrest does come through, it will be legitimate. And if Benjamin Netanyahu steps foot outside of Israel into another ICC signatory state, then he could and should be arrested. Rightly so.
The actions of a terrorist group, and the actions of the ICC do absolutely nothing to get a pause in the fighting, to get the hostages out, or aid in.
Craig McKinley! Yeah.
If the genocidal, despotic maniac who is raining those death showers, as Zara Sultana described, onto Palestinians in Gaza, in Rafah at the moment specifically, more than anywhere else, then he could not do so from behind bars. Also, the Deputy Prime Minister is another Israeli government member who the ICC are looking to arrest as well. Obviously, the ICC are also seeking the arrest of Hamas leaders as well for hostage taking on October the 7th. But the list of war crimes committed by Israel since just the day after October the 7th, right up until today, is unbelievable. So, of course, I condemn Hamas for their actions on October the 7th in terms of hostage taking, but again, for Sunak and others to try and claim that Israel's defending itself, that's complete and utter bullshit, as they're an occupying force, and whatever Hamas did on October the 7th took place in Palestine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is an emotional day for me, and if you would indulge me to say a few thanks.
Obviously, he's been involved in the blood scandal inquiry, I believe, and that's why there's been so much attention drawn to him during this session. I think it's getting towards the end here, so let's see what he's got to say about all that business.
Because there are a few are due. And one of those, of course, well, an apology, actually, that I've caused the breaking of so many rules today. Clapping.
Oh, sorry. Just before we hear from him, Vicky Cleves reminded me there in the chat, I did do a full-length video about the ICC arrest warrants. If you've not checked that out already, please do. So please bookmark it or put it on your saved for later watch list, however you prefer to remind yourselves about content. And you're quite right, Hamas has agreed to themselves being investigated, but Israel is doing the usual typical response, as I point out in the video, simply accusing the ICC of anti-Semitism, etc. But there's another important twist to it, that is with the actual legality of these warrants. Whilst Netanyahu and Sunak there are trying to wave off any legitimacy, let's say that they might be a little overconfident, but don't want to give any spoilers away. You'll have to watch the video, of course, and please do check out some of our other content and live streams as well. Really helps out the algorithm. Thanks for joining us tonight on My Left Eye. Let's see what Craig McKinley's going to say. I did notice just before I paused it there, he mentioned he'd broken a few parliamentary rules. One of them is, of course, that you're not supposed to clap in the House of Commons. There have been a couple of occasions where that rule has been let slide, and a few of those have been somewhat controversial as well, should we say, but that doesn't really come into it. Let's just see what he's got to say.
I've got trainers on because my shoes wouldn't go over the plastic feet, and my jacket wouldn't go over the bionic arm. So apologies for that. But I want to give some thanks. And first of all, the thanks to you, Mr. Speaker, for being there for me, for coming to visit. And I will tell everybody the little story. They thought, the rest of the hospital thought I must be dreadfully ill, because they said that guy's got the funeral director in already.
Okay, it kind of makes me cringe a bit seeing him have the little in-jokes as well. Just want to wish you a good night to Mithril. Thanks a lot for being on the stream tonight. Thanks a lot for your continued support on the channel as well. We'll see you next time. Hopefully, until then, take care, have yourself a good night, Mithril, and see you soon.
But no, you've cared for me throughout, and I thank you for that. The other person in this chamber I'd like to thank is the Prime Minister, who's been with...
Oh, apologies, he's, sorry, he's not been involved in that scandal. He's just come back from a serious illness, of course. Apologies for the mix-up there.
With me throughout. He hasn't advertised it. He's been to see me multiple times. And to me, that shows the true depth of the character of the Prime Minister, and thank you for that. And to my wife, who's in the chamber, and my daughter and other family members, my father-in-law, I'd like to thank my wife for being there every single day.
As mushy as that might be, you could argue that that just goes to show, and I'm not making any derogatory comments about illness in this, but just in Sunak's case, that says more to me that he cares more about looking after his own than other people. And the clapping, you're not clapping. The clapping.
They took me from close to death to where I am today, so thank you for that. I'm not entirely sure I'm that happy that the two surgeons who took this lot off are there, but never mind. But can I ask the Prime Minister, there is a question here. Prime Minister, can we please ensure that we embed recognition of early signs of sepsis? It wouldn't have worked for me, mine was too quick and too sudden. But for many people, they do get a few days. If we can stop somebody ending up like this, I would say that's a job well done. But also, Mr. Speaker, to impress upon your health ministers to allow the provision of appropriate prosthetics, particularly for multi-limb amputees, at the right time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's so wonderful to hear from my honourable friend.
Parliament will, of course, be prorogued soon, as there's an election coming up. This very much has a sort of end of school term kind of vibe to it as well, with this sentiment going on here as well. Not to detract from that issue, obviously I support a fully funded NHS a lot more than Sunak does, and more people would have access to prosthetics and many other things, as the question was put to him, if it wasn't for all these cuts, of course. And I'm sure that people listening who know people with similar afflictions will agree with that.
Can I thank him for his kind words, but also personally pay tribute to his family who are here. And I know firsthand the extraordinary job they did to support him over the past several months, and they all deserve our absolute admiration and thanks for what they've done. And on the substantive question that he raises, before I do that, can I also join him in paying tribute to the NHS workers who looked after him? He's right that sepsis is a devastating condition, and we're working hard to raise
pay tribute by slagging them off when they want to protest and strike for a decent pay rise, you mean?
All the details. I'll just say that he is right. The NHS itself has recognised this morning that more needs to be done, and I can assure him that we will do that. The Right Honourable Friend will discuss with him shortly, as will I, his suggestions on how we can improve care and awareness for people. But I'll end where I started earlier today, Mr. Speaker, and just say, Craig, you've inspired each and every one of us. Thank you.
That completes Prime Minister's questions.
And so that will be that. Of course, in the run-up to the election, there'll be less PMQs, therefore less PMQs live streams, unfortunately. But I could be coming up with something else instead. Keep your eye out for that. In terms of the scores on Stop the Boats versus I'm a Lawyer, it was a score draw this week, 1-1. I thought that Sunak was going to sort of put the afterburners on a little bit and really go for it, seeing as he knew that he was about to announce the election. But I'm sure we'll be hearing that phrase plenty of times as the party election broadcasts, interviews, etc. go on. And as I said just there, that was a fairly sort of sentimental end of term kind of vibe to the whole session. I thought Hoyle was very quiet, apart from at the end where he received some praise. Be interesting to see if this is one of the final sessions that he's the Speaker for. Obviously that's an elected position, the Speaker of the House. That remains to be seen. Keith, very weak as always. The SNP put in a decent performance. Stephen Flynn as always, even though he never gets a proper answer, he only gets a response. And a bit of strong language as well on this week's PMQs, as you saw there. So this scene that you see before you in just 6-7 weeks time will look very different. A lot of the faces on the left you'll see now won't be there, but where those Tory losses are going to go remains to be seen. As I said at the top of the video, I'm expecting at the moment for there to be quite a low turnout at the general election, and a lot more content on that to come up on My Left Eye. Before we say our goodbyes and I give a final thanks to members, just a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button and thumbs up if you've not done so already. Help us reach a broader and wider audience. And thanks for being here tonight. Thanks for staying polite, civil and cordial in the chat. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for your questions. You've all been wonderful. A very warm welcome to those of you who've just started to watch live streams and videos recently, and a very warm welcome back to long-term subscribers and viewers as well. Let's just have a bit of final few mouthfuls of fondue for supper. And I just want to play the members scroll again. Very warm welcome to Sharon and Wondergupta, 2 new members this evening as well. You'll be on the next members scroll, of course, as well as everybody else. Also, please do consider joining the channel if you've not done so already, or if you're watching on a replay, hit the super thanks button, or check out the link in the description of this video for the Buy Me a Coffee page, where you can show solidarity for just the price of a tasty hot beverage. Who's up for a little bit more fondue?
Under my leadership, we will engage constructively with the government. Not opposition for opposition's sake, not scoring party political points or making impossible demands, but with the courage to support where that's the right thing to do.